Good morning, tubers. Today, I'm going to talk about compassion, basic human feeling for each other. Now, honestly, I've been saved for as long as I can remember. I went to church, grew up in church, so I don't really have a lost person's perspective on what it feels like to interact with each other. But I do know that the grace of God gives us a new understanding of what it is like to feel compassion for your fellow man. There's opening yourself up to salvation introduces you to the universality of our condition. Before before you understand that we are all sinners and we are all saved by grace, then we all exist separately as different little units, just wandering around in this universe. And we see our sin as being something that separates us. We look at this person, we say they're dishonest. We look at this person, we say they're a murderer, or they're a pervert, or I don't know, they're a thief, whatever. Well, we could even, just misalign people for being annoying, for little stuff. But once you become saved, once you admit to yourself and to God your own sinful nature, then you realize that we all are running around with basically the same thing, just differing types and degrees, but the underlying nature of it is it's all sin. And that, oddly enough, brings us together. It makes us all alike. It makes us all the same. When we accept forgiveness, we cannot accept it without receiving a portion of it. Makes sense. And when we receive a portion of that forgiveness, we understand on a new level what it is like to forgive. That is a portion. It may be a seed, an introductory portion of God's goodness. In the story of creation, God took the dust of the earth and he formed man and he breathed life into him. So without God's portion, we are essentially dirt. We're all just dirt walking around. God has given us that good portion. And it is in this portion that we receive compassion, we receive forgiveness, we receive honesty, we receive all the goodness of our virtues. And when we accept salvation, when we acknowledge our sinful nature, when we acknowledge that we require salvation, then we have that portion to give to others, whatever portion that we've received. And the greater the portion that we receive, the greater our capacity to give. We are all challenged daily by the harshness, by cruelty, by the sin of those around us. We see it everywhere. Probably, definitely more profoundly in others than in ourselves. That's just human nature. But we have a hard time changing our ways. Let's say that. Our new understanding doesn't instantly bring about a new change in lifestyle. We may be saved, all right, and we may have a friend who is struggling with something, and we still don't give them the attention they deserve. We may still drive by that homeless person on the street corner and never give them a second thought, never try to go out of our way to impact their life. And so, this realization, this awareness of compassion, it must be brought into our lives through action. I think the word the Bible uses is alms, or acts of loving kindness, good deeds. And those are very important to demonstrating the goodness, the grace, the love that God has given to us. Those become our exercises in godliness. So when you're in a social situation, when you're in a circumstance where you're challenged by someone close to you, or maybe even someone you don't even know. Let's say someone's rude to you just on the street at random. The depth of your compassion, the depth of your love, the depth of your forgiveness, all determine how much of those, what's the word I'm looking for, negative influences, stimulus, determines how much of that negative stimulus you can receive. Now, let's say you're getting, I don't know, a pound of insult, but you've only got an ounce of forgiveness. That pound is going to overwhelm you. So this is where we look to God. It says that God will never challenge us beyond what we are able. So anytime that something happens to you that you're dwelling on it, it's a stumbling block. It's getting in your way. You've got to realize that what it requires of you is something that God wants you to have. And He's got it for you. You just have to ask Him for it. During times of struggle, now that's just an example of one instance. Let's say it's something prolonged. Let's say you're going through divorce. That's a very common one today. And y'all are fighting. One of you is trying to get hold of the kids, and it's draining, and you're just filled with all this negative emotion because they're trying to take your kids away. I mean, it's pretty serious, fighting over the children, or fighting over the house or the car, whatever the hell you're fighting over. That kind of prolonged battle demands a lot of us, and every day we have to reach down and reach up. We have to humble ourselves before God, and we have to ask Him for what we need, and He will give it to us, because God never tempts us. He only challenges us to grow, that we may be in a greater possession of His good portion. He wants us to have that good portion. He wants to give us more of the substance of the breath of life, so that we may in turn give it to others. We are vessels. We are conduits for God's goodness on this earth. And that should be our focus. Not to see ourselves as human beings struggling with life, but as instruments of a living God. This is a good sermon. It feels good. It feels good. I was inspired this morning. Someone was harsh to me, and that's where it came from. This is a little personal one-on-one confession time. I was in a position in my life where I wanted some sympathy. I wanted just, an ear to listen to. And I didn't find it. Okay, but as human beings, we're not supposed to look to other human beings for support. I mean, we can. Sure. It helps. It's nice. But ultimately, our support comes from God. He is my shield. He is my protector, my high tower, my deliverer. He will guide us through the darkness when no one else will. He will carry our footsteps across whatever challenges we may face, and He will never leave nor forsake us. The Lord is a very present help in time of trouble. He is always dependable. He will always be there, and He is in every moment with us, never abandons us. As long as we turn to Him, He is there in an instant, always ready to hear our prayers, always ready to receive our supplications. So, perhaps this was a lesson for me, to depend on God,